run around the harbors in a skiff and drum up boat work, and that's how I met Leo Fender. The other thing that happens is guys try and compensate. They think the truss rod's number one, they think it's an action height adjustment, which is not. It's a compensation for string tension. Clapton's management came to them and asked if maybe we would build them one of these guitars. So we ended up having Blackie in our possession. Tim had it, and we guarded it like Fort Knox, and we spec'd it all out and we built him a guitar, which I believe to this day he has. Of course, I've been running Firebird pickups in the neck since, the 60s.
That's cool.
Leo went in the back one day and saw these guys sawing all that stuff in two and throwing it in the dumpster, and he didn't like waste, so he gathered up what was left. The next, there was one body left that was a prototype that I ended up with. But I did loan it to a guy that played with the Highwaymen. This thing has been played by probably Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, all those guys. It's one of my main players. All that wears me.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what this is?
Yeah, it's my thumb pick.
Is that blood?
It's me going like
is that
this.
Blood?
Yeah, it very well could be, yeah.
It
might be,
blood.
actually.
That's blood.
Yeah, because this bridge,
Look, it's splattered over there too.
Yeah, the neck set is so bad on this thing. Look how much I've had to thin the bridge out.
Wow.
But I'm superstitious about this guitar. I don't want to take the neck off it. The saddle was probably that high when it was new.
Like triggers.
Can you strum it real quick?
Oh, pretty good.
Well, it's sound posted. That's why it's not loud. That's why I can play it as loud as I do.
Right. I was wondering that. I was like, how come you don't get any feedback and stuff? But yeah, that makes sense.
I gotta say, it's like a trestle brace.
Well, I was gonna say too, because these a lot of acoustics can be loud, and people always associate the acoustic thing like if it's loud, it's really good.
Yeah.
No, but you want a balanced. Like this would record really well, like a J45 kind of now, so you don't get all that body.
And if you pull the sound post out of that thing, it's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous, yeah. But yeah, you put a sound post in there and you can turn up really loud with the pickup.
But when Seymour made me, this is one of the first Magmite pickups.
These are my favorite,
and
actually.
It's got a little tiny diaphragm in it that just points at the back, and all you got to do is crack that thing on, and it gives you this very acoustic ambience. It is very acoustic electric-ish.
Right.
It works for me, and people trip on it because I'm playing it loud as hell, and I can do controlled feedback with it.
If you guys, anyone out there should see Doc play live. He's an incredible player.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mothership Gear. Today we are at Doc Pittillo's spot, the Guitar Doctor, with Chris, Darley, and Doc. And they're going to talk all about the history of being a guitar luthier. They're going to talk about Doc's relationship with Fender and all of these cool stories that happen here in Orange County. So tune in, and if you guys like more of this content, then please subscribe to Ildefonso Inc., and we hope you enjoy the episode.
We just got to Guitar Doc. We're gonna go in and talk to Doc Pittillo right now. I did this. Fuck, I did this.
Then open the door.
We're gonna go talk to Doc Pittillo right now. Oh. Here we go.
There it is. Although I did the cardinal sin and I put a filter on in there.
No, that's actually my new thing to do.
Yeah.
Is because a lot of the guitars that are like on a Firebird or 335 especially.
You've seen my bird? That's that
Oh, I
one
know.
we built
It's-
with that
no,
old
it's-
wood.
it's amazing.
The Bird and the Les Paul both.
But there's something about that Gibson mid-rangey thing, because you can't really use the neck too often because you
Yeah.
get that really low mid thing.
That's my bitch with humbuckers.
Yeah, but then,
You know?
but I noticed that when you put the Filtertron on the neck, it's a little more sparkly, but
Yeah.
you still get that mid-range thing, but it's like clarity. And so when the middle position is really bitchin' because you can get that really focused mid-range
Yeah.
thing.
And it adds that sparkle and that dynamic range that
Right.
you just don't get with a humbucker.
Yeah.
And it's much more usable. And you can dial that mid-range and the darkness in, but you
Yeah.
cannot dial it out. No, you
This thing is so cool. It's like the craziest. I saw him playing it once and I was like,
It's a
what
beast.
is that?
The thing about this guitar is the only way I can describe it is it sounds like wood hanging in the air.
Yeah.
It is so organic and woody.
Well, he plays this through the divided by 13 amp, and it's, I told him after the show, I was like, that is the coolest sounding guitar combination.
It's pretty bitchin'.
It almost
really
looks like
different.
it would feel like this, but there is like a little layer of coating on it.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh yeah, wow.
This is like you know, kind of flamed maple, and this is a spruce top.
Okay.
You know,
'Cause they did-
Zephyr,
yeah.
Emperor, Regent. They came up with some wacky names.
But what pickup was in it before it? Or was it just an arch top like?
no, this was a 3 pickup. It had
Oh, it
this,
was.
It had this big, like push button, like car looking thing on it, and then it had what they call the New York Mini Humbucker. But they weren't humbuckers. They were a single coil pickup with a steel cover, and they sounded hideously bad. That's why when you find these, they're usually really clean. So I modified it. I put Filtertrons in it, and a friend of mine, you know, made these covers for me, and then I wired it like a Strat, and this thing's like a super Strat. You know?
Let's go back to what got you into playing guitar. Was it your parents or like friends
no.
playing music?
No.
Or?
Of course, it was the Psychedelia in the 60s.
Oh, of course,
That's
yeah.
what got me into
Yeah.
playing guitar. I mean, you know, I get all of a sudden
Yeah.
the Doors came out and Hendrix came out, and it
Yeah.
flipped my lid, and we found marijuana. And
What were you listening to before, like the guitar band stuff? Was it like Beatles, like all the normal?
I listened to a lot of Beatles, a lot of really harmonic stuff, which I, you know, all dearly love. And when I was a kid, you know, my mom played Artie Shaw and, you know, a lot of the big band stuff. So I heard that in the background. And then there was a lot of folk music.
And where'd you grow up?
I was born in Covina, California. And then by the time I think when I was 9 or 10, we moved to Newport Beach.
Oh, cool. Whoa, so you got to like live the whole Beach Boys lifestyle.
Oh my God, yes I did. Square peg in a round hole, though. You know, I mean, you know, my dad built hot rods, and you know, so he came out of racing, and you know, being a
What kind of music?
grease monkey type
What kind
guy.
of music was your dad listening to?
You know, to be honest with you, I don't really know what he liked.
Yeah.
I think I remember him, you know, kind of humming old country tunes and
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm guessing he listened to, you know, the Hank Williams,
totally.
Ray Price style country stuff would be my guess. Because I do remember some of that floating around as a kid. But, you know,
Was he supportive of like the rock and roll movement?
absolutely not.
Yeah, I
we
bet.
didn't talk for almost 5 years. It was not good.
Because he was like, what's happening to my son?
Yeah, well, my neighbor, the folks that we grew up next door were Bass and Helen Hutchinson. Bass played for Artie Shaw, and Helen was one of the 2 main torch singers in Hollywood in the 20s. It was
Oh,
her
wow.
and Dale Evans. She introduced Dale Evans to Roy Rogers. And Les Paul came through that house.
Yeah.
George Van Epps came through that house, and just, you know, all the old big band guys. I mean, names that, you know, people that know that stuff would know, you know, but, you know, there was heavyweights. They had 12 kids. They literally lived in a cabana on the roof, the parents, and they played in a little club in Newport, and that's how they supported their family. They had 12 kids. Most of them were girls. And so by the time the girls were teenagers, you saw Dave Mason, Neil Young, Graham Parsons, all these guys running around the house, so there was music right next door to me. And a lot of it and a lot of mischief going on.
What year was this?
God,
like late 60s?
It was the late 60s, yeah. It started in the mid 60s.
Yeah,
I mean, I started fooling with guitars probably in 64 or 5. When I used to run around the harbor, I did boat work, and I would run around the harbors in a skiff and, drum up boat work. And that's how I met Leo Fender. I was working on a boat one day, and I got talking to this guy, and I said, hey, I got a guitar and I'm sanding it down. He goes, well, I have a guitar factory. And I really didn't know who he was. I didn't really understand what Fender was or any of that.
Right.
But he gave me some parts, bits and pieces of guitars and inlays and stuff, because I had mentioned to him that I was interested in learning how to do inlay work and what have you. And that was kind of the extent of it. And, fast forward a lot of years, I met a guy named Zell Tate in Fullerton, very close to the Fender factory, and I apprenticed for him, kind of an old world apprenticeship, for room and board basically, but there was a whole lot of perks that came along with that. You know? And we had a shop in the San Fernando Valley, and that's where I met tons of people, all the Wrecking Crew people, Carol Kay, Tommy Tedesco, all those people came through there, yeah.
This is Doc's first amplifier. When did you get this?
I got that when I was in Zell's house. A kid walked in with this thing and says, oh, I don't want this old amp. He goes, take the speakers out of it and give them to me because I want to play bass through them. And I said, no, you can't take the speakers out of that. And I gave him a 15-inch speaker, and he went away and gave me that.
Oh, just
gave it to me because it was just an old amp. Nobody wanted these in those days.
Yeah, right. They were just like, this is shit.
And me being the weird kid, I went, yes, I want that amp.
Wait, what's in the? Are these like 8s or something, or what's?
They're 10s.
10s.
And it's a true stereo amp. See, look in the bottom. There's a power amp in the bottom, and then there's
10s.
2 transformers, 2 power amps, and it's a true stereo amp.
So cool.
Yeah.
But so Gibson they were making these for the stereo guitars, or were they just making the amps?
They were making them for accordion reproduction.
Oh, that's right.
And what they did is the melody side was the reverb channel. Most of these had like a satellite vibrato, but the rare ones actually had reverb. Yeah. And then the dry side was the Oompa side. I love that amp. And it's just funny because...
How similar are these to like the Fender Tweed stuff?
I don't know. I think they're quite different. I do. Gibson kind of had their own thing, although everybody was copying the Fender. It's EL84s. It's a stereo twin EL84, and they're probably 9 watts a side.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah. Because I think it's Class A. Don't quote me on that. I don't know.
So good. That reverb on it, is that from this, the reverb?
Yes.
So good.
That amp loves Gretchen.
Yeah. Sounds so good. So backtracking a little bit, this is like when you actually started being a luthier and people were coming to
coming to Zell.
Zell, yeah.
Yeah, that house.
And where was Zell's?
In Fullerton.
Oh, in Fullerton.
Yeah, right off Amherst. You could walk to strings and things from there.
That's crazy. So like when did the gravity hit you that you were like, oh my gosh, like, I know, like, this is insane that I just met like Leo Fender, and now I'm like in Fullerton, you know, kind of doing this guitar work for these famous musicians. Like, did it just happen so quick that you didn't really have time to think about it?
It did, and I was really ADD. I was all over the map when I was a kid, so none of that stuff was really dawning on me.
Yeah, it wasn't sinking in.
It was just what life was.
Yeah, right.
You know, and so, you know, and it was great. You know, all the Jackson Browne guys came through that house too. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on there. The Redbone, you know, the Rolera brothers, and all those guys.
And what, you were just doing like basic setups and stuff for these guys, or were you doing like everything at that point?
We were doing everything. Yeah, we were doing refins. I mean, I refinished my 56 Strat.
Oh,
you
no.
know, really bad. You know, it was beautiful though. It looked like a custom car.
I was kind of talking to Fred about this too, but I guess that was the thing, is like, you got guitars then, you weren't thinking about like what they would be worth down the line. People were changing pickups, and even Leo Fender made the Telecaster and the Strat to be like, I don't really like this neck. Like, let me just put this other neck on it. Oh, it feels better. And then the pickups and stuff, you would change them out.
You know, I didn't know him well. I just rubbed elbows with him over the years. The guy I ended up knowing really well was Paul Floodman, who was the A&R guy at Fender all through the 60s. But yeah, you know, I mean, this whole collectible Fender thing is so funny to me, because his whole he was an engineer, and he designed a very simple instrument that, as history would have it, he got a lot of stuff right the first time around and what have you. But the whole idea was to make a modular, inexpensive instrument anybody could buy and make a lot of noise with.
Well, and it's like an old car. Like, if you don't like the muffler on it, you change the muffler or whatever. Like, he designed it that way so it could be adjustable for musician to musician's taste. You know,
I think his idea about the neck thing was just that, you know, when they wear them out or they twist or something goes wrong, you take it off, throw it in a trash can, and put a new one on it, which they did a lot.
Totally. People were throwing away like 57, 58, 9 necks, like in the trash.
Oh, yeah. Well, there was buckets of them. There was a little room, a little bigger than this at Fender, anybody could walk into. You walk in there with your guitar, and there was an old dude named Richard that worked there, and I don't know who else worked there. I've heard some other names, but I didn't know them. You know, you could walk in there and he would service your guitar, and, you know, he would take the necks off, throw them in a barrel or a trash can, and put a new one on it, kind of set it up and send you on your way. You know, it was a pretty neat thing, you know, that nobody does anymore.
Yeah. No, I mean, because I mean, probably like Gibson didn't really have that same concept, it seems. I know you could probably get a different neck for your 335 and stuff, and people were doing that, but it seems like, to me at least, with the bolt-on neck thing, like, it was kind of designed more to be that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, to pull a neck off any Gibson guitar is a process.
Well, and it kind of like, with the Fender thing, the Gibson thing, I'm pretty sure the Luthier concept was fairly new too, because they needed guys to, you know, outside of Fender and Gibson, that people could go to if their guitar needed a setup and stuff. Like, was that like a relatively new kind of...
Almost nobody was doing that. The only place you could get your guitar serviced was at the factories.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There was very, very few guys, you know, and most of them were in garages and had big hammers and chisels.
It was kind of just DIY.
Doing terrible things to guitars.
Right. Yeah, right. Like hillbilly, like mods and stuff. And in the 70s, you were working for Zach, that guy Zach, right?
Zell,
sorry.
Zell Tate was his name.
Tate.
Still alive and still in New Zealand.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He worked for Leo, right? Or was this outside?
No, he never worked for Leo. We did actually work for those guys to some degree. We did a lot of, they would send us used necks and have us refret them. They did that for a while and things like that. But we really never worked for Fender. Paul Floodman was the A&R guy for Fender, and I met him. He's the one I eventually went on the road with in the mid-'70s, and we made a ton of money and got in a lot of trouble.
So you guys were kind of just like the dudes that, you know, the band guys knew to come to.
We were the local yokels, yeah.
Right. And they could just be like, oh, I need a refret, or I need this and that, and okay. When did he move away, and when did you kind of like take over or decide like, oh, I'm just going to start doing this Luthier thing?
Well, like I say, I apprenticed for him for about 5 years for room and board and the perks, you know, and what have you. And Floodman was a hustler that was A&R for Fender. And I mean, I can't even tell you how much stuff came out of the back door of Fender in those days. And Floodman's still alive, and he knows where all the bodies are buried too. And I wish somebody would interview him because he's a wealth of information. But Floodman was outfitting, you know, all the clubs in town and getting, you know, bags of this, that, and the other, and everybody loved Floodman. And he would come in with Rhodes pianos, and we had a basement full of Paisley tellies and the Blue Flower tellies in cases that we were selling for $125.
Whoa.
All day long, and
That's
Rhodes
crazy.
pianos and all that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of hinky business going on.
Right.
And that's where I got the Rosewood necks. Leo, being the guy he is, still had an office over there. In '68, they discontinued that line of guitars, the Rosewood tellies, because they delaminated. So they only made 400. 200 got out. They recalled some. And then the project sat, and Leo went in the back one day and saw these guys sawing all that stuff in two and throwing it in the dumpster. And he didn't like waste. So he gathered up what was left. The next, there was one body left. It was a prototype that I ended up with, and gave him to Floodman. And Floodman brought us 13 or 14 of those Rosewood necks. 3 of them were Brazilian Rosewood, which I didn't get. This is one of those Rosewood necks that Leo gave us.
Whoa.
And this one, Zell fucked up. He thinned it out too much. He loved to thin stuff out all the time, so I ended up laminating Brazilian Rosewood and maple to it, front and back. And, you know, it's super skinny. He thinned it out a lot, but I really kind of like it.
Let me see.
Yeah, check it out.
Oh yeah. Whoa. It's really skinny.
Yeah. And that was my, that and that 335 were my gigging guitars.
Right.
Howard just rewound that back pickup for me.
My fingers are stuck.
Of course, I've been running Firebird pickups in the neck since, the 60s. You know what
That's
I'm saying?
cool.
I love those things.
Yeah, it's got that like really squishy mid-range kind of poke thing to it. Yeah, it's great. Ooh, the middle is interesting.
It's a very voicey guitar.
It is.
It's a mahogany body. One of the first ones I made, and if you look at it, the neck is like cockeyed. You know, it's really cockeyed. You know, a lot of stuff went on like that.
Right.
You know, and that was kind of my association with Leo. And then I ran into him here and there over the years, you know.
Yeah.
And I got to be really good friends with Doc Kaufman, who was his partner in the original Radio Shop. It was K&F Radio Shop, I think. I don't remember the exact name of it. And I knew Doc, and then I met George Fullerton much later, and we became really good friends. He visited me once a month for probably the last 5 years of his life. Really funny guy. He was a genuine human.
That's cool.
Really cool.
So moving forward, I guess, like, so you're kind of in cahoots with Fender, getting some necks and stuff, and then you were kind of like, they were kind of watching you a bit because they were like, Doc's making these necks like really good.
No, this is way before that.
Oh, way before that.
Yeah, this is way before that. No, actually, like I say, you know, I apprenticed for Zell, and, you know, I got older and, I wanted to be more independent and what have you. But Floodman called me one day and said, hey, my wife, he met a girl named Vicki Ludwin. Hank Ludwin was one of the old silent film era big producers in Hollywood. She went to UCLA with Joe Sample and, a lot of these heavyweight players, and she could play and sing. I mean, she was really good. She and Paul ended up getting together and, they got married and what have you. But he called me one night and says, hey, we need a hired gun to play. And we went on the road. He knew everybody, through his association with Fender. And we made so much money. I mean, all cash money, gigging constantly. We played 6-7 nights a week for years and years and years. And that's kind of where I learned to put a real band together.
Okay.
So at that point, I'm playing for a living,
Oh, okay. And what years was this?
I think I went out with him in either late 73 or early 74, and that ended in 79. And then I put my kind of country rock band together,
Okay.
White Line Fever. And then we were totally insane and had a million opportunities that we, basically blew up.
Right. The classic, the classic band stuff.
But we did a lot of great gigs,
That's awesome.
We played all the time and made a stout living. We made a really good living for a long, long time. But, of course, the drug abuse and the alcoholism kind of.
And then you still had the Luthier stuff that you were doing on the side.
Yeah, I had a little tar paper shack in Costa Mesa that I think I was paying $85 a month for. And then I had a single car garage that I kept all my crap in. And when I was out of town, guys would live in it. I left all my stuff there, my tools, my guitars, everything. Nothing ever got stolen. And I would come back into town and have to throw everybody out, but I always had that place to come back to.
That's awesome.
Because I was on the road all the time.
Who of note was coming in there to get their guitars worked on?
At that point, it was mostly local people. Yeah.
Who was like your first big like guitar guy coming in to, get their stuff worked on from you?
Well, that would be when Zell and I had the place in San Fernando Valley.
Yeah.
Floodman and a guy named Rod Medler from Newport bought a music store, which was a front for a ton of stuff. That's when music stores had like a record department and a sheet music department and music and all that. And we had our little thing in the back. And I want to say that started in 67, 68, something like that. And that's where I met, a ton of people, Carol Kay, Rory Gallagher, Tommy Tedesco. I got to be pretty good friends with Howard Roberts, and what have you, because he did little guitar seminars there and so on and so forth.
Right.
And, and I got backstories on all those people,
right.
With the relationships we had, especially Robert, who was he was a wonderful human and an unbelievable player.
Oh, yeah.
But so that's where I met a lot of people that were high profile, the Seals and Croft guys. I got to be good friends with Danny Seals and Rory Gallagher. Rory really treated me well. I mean, he took me in tow and took me to all those TV shows he did and always made sure I was there.
So he was coming over here from Ireland?
Yeah.
Just doing like local gigs around town?
Oh, yeah. He was doing high profile gigs. He was big.
Yeah.
That Tattoo album went huge.
I never knew because I knew he was like an Irish kind of hero, you know? But I didn't know outside of that, like how well his career was actually going for him.
Hard to say because he was a screaming alcoholic,
Well, same thing with like Johnny Winter and stuff too, he was obviously huge in the 70s, but he kind of had that like drug thing and he kind of started going downhill. And
Johnny had a lot of enablers,
When did you meet Johnny Winter?
God, that would have been probably in that late 80s period of time we talked about, something like that. And I wish I was better with time.
He just came
frames.
to you to start working on his guitars and stuff?
Well, I did a couple of quick fixes for them when they were playing Coach House and what have you. And then I mentioned to him that I was making these real lightweight semi-hollow guitars with Firebird style headstocks and stuff, and they got interested in it. So the old Pittillo Customs, which are still great guitars, they're, you know, not my cup of tea at this point, but they really sounded unbelievable. But anyway, he played a couple of those, and he played them at the Strand, and he did 4 or 5 gigs on those guitars, and he really liked them a lot. But he loved that little laser that Erlewine made him. You know, that was just his thing, you know, and what have you. So, but I did build one for him, and, you know, I got to hang out with him, and it was interesting, you know, because he was like a Southern gentleman. Yeah. You know, he was crazy as hell when he was really on it.
Oh, right.
But, you know, he really
that
was
Southern hospitality,
very
you know?
much a Southern gentleman. You know, when you got with him, really soft spoken and you know, and inclusive and what have you. So, you know, I'm really happy to have met that guy. You know, I didn't know him super well, but it was, you know, I did hang with him a bit.
Yeah,
you know?
That's awesome. We were talking earlier too about the Blackie story. I wanted to kind of touch on.
Yeah, that's that whole thing. You know, I got all tangled up with a lawsuit with Fender. They did not like the fact that I was building these really perfect guitars, and it got around the industry how good the stuff Bill Antell and I were doing and what have you. But Clapton's management came to us because Seymour Duncan was beta testing the Antiquities pickups on all these guitars we were building. And, you know, and I gave him quite a few guitars actually that we had built, but we beta tested for the Antiquities line of pickups, and Tim Larson was kind of his number one guy. He was, you know, always hung with Seymour and you know, helped him out when they were on the road and going to shows and so on and so forth. So Clapton's management came to them and asked if maybe we would build him one of these guitars. So we ended up having Blackie in our possession. Tim had it, and, you know, we like guarded it like Fort Knox, you know, and we spec'd it all out, and we built him a guitar, which I believe to this day he has.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But
was there anything special to Blackie that kind of set it apart from like any other black Strat?
Just a great 54 Strat.
And it wasn't, you know, it was all stock or,
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was untouched, basically. Wow. You know, I think the 3-position switch was even still in it.
Really?
Yeah, it was pretty stock and what have you. But we built him one, and he really liked it. And Bill Schultz did not like that, especially because I was young and I was real mouthy about it.
The fact that like he didn't go to Fender to do this, he went to you guys.
Yeah, they didn't like that at all.
Of course.
And, you know, I told you the ensuing story, but, you know, it's not really worth going on.
No, what a cool opportunity, though, to just, like, literally hold this, like, iconic in my hands, guitar, you know?
Yeah, it was super cool.
Yeah, that's rad.
I really, I was privy to a lot of cool things that I maybe didn't quite understand at the time, you know, but, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to ask about, like, maybe some guitar nerd questions of, like...
okay.
I don't know. Like, there's, like, at least for me, I was buying a lot of vintage guitars and stuff, and kind of, like, thinking, like, you know, if I just bought an old Firebird, you know, by buying any old Firebird, it would be great.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to every kind of model of, you know, Gibson or Fender, is like, they're not all equal. And is that correct to say?
Well,
like,
especially the older ones.
Yeah.
Because like we talked about, there was so much hand work that went into those things. So, you know, if all those guys were, you know, drinking and smoking on a Friday afternoon, you know, and thinking about what they were doing for the weekend, you know,
right.
not so much so great, you know. What made a lot of those old instruments great was at that time, wood was very available, and you know, they used, you know, especially Gibson still actually to this day, you know, use quarter sawed wood in the necks and things like that. And, you know, that made for a quality instrument. But in the old days, they were hand shaping necks. So they were all different.
Right.
And if the pickup winds weren't good that day, or
it depended on like who was working that day, and the right combination of people created a, you know, a better or worse instrument, you know?
Yeah. Whereas now everything's made CNC. And we talked earlier about the whole idea of the modular Fender.
Yeah.
Well, to me, the Squires are that now. You can buy them for $200 and they're fabulous. And people hate that.
The Squire stuff, they're put together, I think, by hand, but they're all factory made, like as far as like the cuts and stuff and all that, right?
Yeah.
So that is totally true, and I'm sure like a lot of people watching or whatever will agree that like sometimes you just play like a Squire, and you're like, why does this sound just as good or better than the American series or whatever? And do you have like an answer for that?
I do have an answer for that. Again, a Fender is not rocket science. It's a very simple device, simple and really, really great. And now they're very consistently made. The amount of winds that are on the pickups and they're not all created equal.
No.
The plastic bobbin pickups do not sound as good as the old phenolic bobbin ones that they're wound straight on the magnets and things like that. There are differences for sure, but because they're CNC cut, fret spacing, bridge placement, all that stuff is mathematically perfect. Neck angles, the neck pockets. I mean, look at all those 50s guitars. I've seen Tellys that had a lip that big in the neck pocket, 50s Tellys that were just terrible.
Well, I kind of explain it too, like to some of my friends with like a lot of the new, well, let's say Gibson and Fender. It's like they're taking something that was perfect, that was mathematically thought out, and it was like, this is what a 335 should be, this is what a Strat should be. In every new series that they do, it's like a recipe. It's like this recipe that everyone knows. Let's say it's spaghetti and meatballs. They're throwing chocolate sauce on it to make it different. And they're calling it this kind of series, but it's really like they're kind of just throwing stuff at it, and sometimes the series ends up being good and you're like, oh, this is a good series, but a lot of times they're just selling the same product and tweaking it and making it better, or they're making it worse,
it better or worse. It's like it's like the Fender stuff. If you buy a stock Strat with 3 knobs on it, volume, tone, and the regular stock pickups, it's going to work like a Strat. And then you buy these Elite series Strats and they got push button this and split push pull that and what have you, which always break and don't sound good, and what have you. But that's that reinventing the wheel.
Well, they just need to make money. That's all it is like, we're going to come up with a new series and we're going to call it the blah blah. So everyone's like, ooh, the blah blah blah. Like, this is going to be good. And then they get it and they're like, I don't know, that last series actually kind of sounds better, and I just wasted like $2,000 on this guitar that I'll probably end up selling for less or whatever.
I really like my super simple older Strat.
Or the Squire, because I like the Squire because it only cost me $400 and it sounds just as good as whatever new thing is out.
And all the old Fender tooling is in Mexico, so a lot of those Baja series, anything that's got the truss rod at the butt, the old crosshatch, truss rod or a bullet truss rod was made on that old tooling, and they're identical to the old Fender stuff. They're really, really good. One of the best new Tellys I've had was a Mexican-made Telly, and it was unbelievably good.
I like
fretwork was rough,
I like some of the
fixable.
The made in Japan stuff too in the 80s.
The Japanese stuff was fabulous.
Well, that's because they were studying all that old stuff, and I think with Fender and stuff too, they ended up hiring them for their Japanese series and all that stuff.
That is when the Texas Amigos guitar shows started really popping off. They had them in the Texas, Dallas, Arlington, and one other place, a couple of them a year. And then they started coming out here. And that's when the guys that became ESP and a few of these big Japanese buyers started buying old, especially Fender stuff, Strats, Tellys, Jazz Masters, all that stuff. They bought acres of them and what have you. And they really, really studied those instruments. And in the mid 80s, I think it was 84 or 5, when the Japanese line came out, they came out with a whole line of, Strats, Tellys that were stock, humbucker ones, and then ones that had, goofy locking systems on them weren't good, but they all sounded good, and they all felt good because they had really studied those guitars.
Right, and after coming out of the 70s where everything just felt like shit, it was probably like, they noticed immediately like, oh, we got to go back to what we were doing or hire these guys or whatever.
Well, at that point, I was working in the back of Coast Music in Fountain Valley, and those things came in, and I immediately started calling my friends that were like, guys that were playing on the road and stuff, and says, come buy this stuff. And they were selling them like crazy because they had $1,000 American Standard that had the shittiest neck shape. They had lace sensor pickups, and they were just horrible. And they were $1,000, and you could buy these things for $199 and throw them in a gig bag and go on about your business. And they were really good.
Yeah.
And that's why they shut that Japanese manufacturing down.
Right. Does that go for like the Grecos and the Burns and all those ones? Because weren't they doing that before they started doing the Fender stuff like that?
And a lot of that stuff was great, but there was a perception in the industry that anything that came from
Japan
there was just, you got with S&H green stamps or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And what have you. But that perception really changed kind of then, in a big way. People really started looking at how good some of this manufacturing was. And then the stuff they were doing that they couldn't import to the United States that like military guys were buying in Japan and stuff was unbelievable. Really good stuff. Wow. Yeah. But,
well, thank you so much for letting us come here and talk.
Well, thank you. It's always good to see you.
Yeah. Doc's my man. He sets up every guitar of mine, and I'm very spoiled. Because now when I pick up a guitar at, wherever, it doesn't have that guitar Doc touch to it. And thank you, seriously.
And I've gone to bat for you on a lot of stuff like that. What was that thing, that Harmony Rocket that I had to pull the fingerboard off of?
Oh, yeah. I brought
the truss rod back together?
A lot of projects. Right now he's got a Mose Ride of mine that literally, like, I fell and shattered on the floor. And I called him going like, I hope you have like 6 months off to fix this thing.
That thing actually will live again.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's actually coming out fine.
Where can people find you if they want to get a guitar set up or
I would imagine I know I have a website. I'm really
Instagram.
I have an Instagram.
Yeah, if they search,
I think it's Guitar Doctor CM Costa Mesa. I believe. Yeah, there. And then there is a website. I don't know if it's .com or .net or.
If you just search Guitar Doc Costa Mesa, he's right by the John Wayne Airport in the lab.
Probably the Guitar Doctor would be my guess.
The Guitar Doc.
Yeah. Or Doc Pittillo, and it's Pittillo. Okay. You can find me.
Yeah. I'm here. Well, thank you again. And thank you. Thanks for chatting with us, Doc. So good to see you.
It's really good to see you guys.
Yeah. See you again soon.
I appreciate you taking the time.
Of course.
All right.
Thank you guys so much for watching Mothership Gear. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you again to Doc Pittillo and Chris Darley for doing this episode with us. If you guys want to connect with Doc, you can find him everywhere online. He's on Instagram, Facebook. I believe it's The Guitar Doctor. We'll put the link down below. And Chris Darley will also include, you can follow him on Instagram. And we will see you guys next time. Later. Bye.
Whenever people actually do this, how many people looking down the neck actually know what they're looking at?
No, none of them.
None of them.
No.
I see, you know what it is? It's like when people get their wine served at the table and they go, oh, yes, this is great. It's like, they don't know what the fuck. They just think it tastes like wine. Like, oh, this is good. But it's the same thing when I see guitar players like, oh, yeah. It's whoa, this thing is crazy though. No, it is crazy.
I'm just gonna start doing it now.
No, I didn't know what I was doing before and looking at necks. Now I know, but every time I see a kid that's just like, oh yeah, I don't know. You're
well,
like,
it's like when the ships came across the seas and the Indians couldn't see them because they had never seen anything like it. Same thing.
Same thing.
And after a while, you start going, oh, now I get it.
Well, okay.
The high spotter, you see a sprung fret.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're looking when you're doing this. You're looking, and you can tell with the light too, is you're looking for any dips.
Yeah. And I look at it from that end.
From this end.
From this end. From the headstock end. That's where I look at it from. See? Because you can really clearly see where the high spot is.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like right there.
Yeah. Generally, where a guitar is going to have a high spot is right where the neck and the body join. They pivot right here.
Yeah.
They almost all have.
Yeah, no, I always see it here, and then there's always like a little bit of something right here. Usually.
Well, yeah. So what happens is these things, they pivot right above where the machining ends. They kind of pivot right here and get a little compression high spot. All guitars do it. Right. Gibsons have a tenon that goes under the back pickup. So those things, you know, the truss rod anchors way above and what have you. But the other thing that happens is guys try and compensate. You know, they think the truss rod's number one. They think it's an action height adjustment, which it is not. You know, it's a compensation for string tension. But what they do is they'll see this high spot and they'll adjust the truss rod too tight, and then you'll have a bump right here. You get a big bump here and they rattle like hell on the bottom end. That's why you gotta level.
Well, yeah. Okay, when you have a high spot here, aren't you just kind of adjusting you have to adjust the section before you just plane it, right? Because if you're just flattening.
No, I get it. I get it as neutral as I can, as straight as I can, as if it's kind of under string tension. You know, I get it to where the relief's about where I want it when it's got tension on it. And then I use a really super accurate, you know, flat block, and I just take the material off only where it needs to go. And I make sure the frets are seated, and if they need to be, you know, glued, I'll take care of that and what have you. But I'll get this top end taken care of, and then if it's got the bump in here, you do a little bit of stuff through here, and then when you get it under tension, it's straight. But it's like these guys that do this plex stuff. They get it dead straight in a neutral position, but the minute you put it under tension, the bumps come back. Well, the high and low spots come back.
Also, some guitars, well, like this one too, it feels amazing. But some guitars don't need to be totally straight to intonate properly and feel right.
No, it depends on the player.
Right.
You know, a lot of old school players that really dig in, you got to run a little relief because the guitar doesn't breathe. And then guys, you know, like me, my hands have gotten arthritic over the years, and I run pretty low. Yeah. Action with tall frets and light strings, and you know, the thing with that is, you know, you got to really watch your intonation and what have you. But guys that dig in, it's too slappy. The guitar doesn't breathe. You got to play it, you know, kind of light touch, and you can get it to breathe. I mean, look at Billy Gibbons. He's been playing sevens his whole life, and his sound is huge.
It's insane. You know? I don't know. I've done that before with a guitar, and I know I kind of gotten it where it's like you have to have the right gain, the right amp, all that.
Exactly.
Because if you don't know how to EQ your amp, it's gonna sound really thin.
Yeah.
And that's for most guitars. Teles, so many tele players I know don't know how to fucking dial in their shit. They make it sound thin and brittle, but it's like you have to know the combination of you. If you're playing a tele, I'm always turning down the treble and finding that sweet spot with the bass.
Yeah, to get that picky sound out.
Because you want a little bit of that, because you want it, you know, on the bridge to be able to poke through. But you gotta think about, if it's hurting your ears, chances are you probably got to back off that treble a bit, or you're going to kill the people in the front row.
That's right. Yeah.